Hello everybody, welcome back to WhatCulture Wrestling. I am, of course, Gareth, sat here on a lovely blue chair in front of my lovely blue screen with my lovely red, white and blue Christmas jumper. And if you're wondering why I'm wearing this so early, because it's not the Christmas edition of NXT yet, I'm not going to be here for that because I'm going to have some time off for Christmas, which is exactly what you deserve as well. Have a bit of a break, have a bit of time away with your family, eat loads of food, drink loads of beer or whatever you want to drink. But that does not mean that I'm not going to be here right now to talk about all the things that happened on NXT last night. So we had loads of stuff announced for this week's show. It was looking so good, so mouth-watering, if you will, because we had Karrion Kross returning to action for the first time in months. You also had Pete Dunne taking on Kyle O'Reilly for the #1 contendership for the NXT Championship. And then we had Toni Storm against Rhea Ripley in a renewal of that just amazing epic rivalry. It's as awesome as it sounds. It's a fun episode, so let's up those downs from NXT. So first up, we had a tag match. We had the tag match which was set up in last week's show when Leon Ruff was supposedly going to be tagging in Damian Priest to take on Johnny Gargano and Austin Theory of The Way. But Damian Priest obviously got obliterated by Karrion Kross, so Kushida jumped in at the last minute to save the day like the gentleman he is. And before we get into the obviously very entertaining match itself, I want to introduce something new on this week's NXT Ups and Downs, something special, something unique to the world of ups and downs. We're going to introduce something called the Gargano meter, because Johnny Gargano is, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the most entertaining, compelling, intriguing, and just downright funny things on all of wrestling television right now. So I'm going to start praising this and rewarding his displays because they've been so consistently good on NXT. So it's going to be like a percentage type thing. So here, his first Gargano moment in this segment that made me chuckle beyond belief was like the synchronized no-look high five that he started doing with Austin Theory. It makes me laugh. It just fills me up with joy, fills my heart full of laughter and fun. So this gets a 65% out of 100 in the Gargano meter, the inaugural Gargano meter. I really enjoyed it and it set the tone for a very fun match. Obviously things like Leon Ruff doing his little cat-like escape springboard thing was always entertaining because it just always is. And then we had like a kip-up kick to Johnny Gargano's smug face, which is another moment that just goes to show that Leon Ruff is not just underrated, not just one of the hidden gems in wrestling right now, but he should, in my eyes, give him all the gold. Maybe don't give him all the gold, but just do more with him at this point, because he's too good. And I say do more with him because the conclusion of this match seems to suggest that he might not be involved in this North American Championship picture going forward. Because Leon Ruff and Kushida weren't able to actually win the match in the end, Austin Theory did like a blind tag spot when Leon Ruff looked to be gaining the advantage over Gargano. He had a nice pinning attempt, which was looking like it was going to seal the deal. But then, obviously, because Austin Theory was the legal man, he snuck into the ring, pulled all that apart, and then hit him with like it was like a pump handle flatliner. I can't really understand exactly what it was. They didn't really name it on NXT, but that's what I'm going to call it, the pump handle flatliner for the win. This obviously halts the slump that he was experiencing for weeks before he infamously quit NXT, like months ago, weeks ago, I can't remember when it was now. And yeah, it looks like all signs are pointing to Austin Theory now being an integral part of The Way, and potentially we could have Kushida, in my eyes, as the new challenger for Johnny Gargano, because he didn't eat the pin here. But I am a little bit concerned for Leon Ruff because I like him, I think he's entertaining, we should do more with him. And if I didn't say, this entire fun little segment, this match and everything else gets an up. Then we had a backstage interview with Shotzi Blackheart. She was talking about how even though her team lost at War Games, she was really proud of them. They did really well, but she was now focused on Indy Hartwell and Candice LeRae because she had a match against Hartwell tonight. And she was going to break more than just Candice LeRae's arm. She was going to like break everyone's spirits and just set the match up. Then we had an unexpected gem of a match on this thing we call NXT, one that wasn't announced beforehand, but it is getting an up. We had Tyler Rust going one-on-one with Tommaso Ciampa after he tried to cost Tommaso Ciampa his match against Cameron Grimes last week. Didn't really come away with that, didn't really pull it off. Cameron Grimes still got beaten by Tommaso Ciampa, but Ciampa seemed focused on sending a bit of a message in this match. He kicked things off by setting up a chair at ringside, putting Timothy Thatcher's t-shirt on it, which I actually own behind that blue screen. and it seemed like he was almost inviting him down to the ring, like, oh, come and watch me absolutely dismantle the guy that you taught some lessons to. But that's not exactly what happened, because Rust put in a hell of a performance in this match. Early on, he showcased all of the skills and teachings that he'd learned from Thatcher, doing a few kind of grappling exchanges and looking quite convincing, to be fair, quite dominant on the ground against Ciampa. But then, just as Ciampa seemed to be getting the upper hand, Thatcher came down to the ring. He was like lowered down. He's like, I see a chair. I see my t-shirt on the chair. I must come down to the ring. And then he stood there with his usual grimace on his face, like, oh, I'm not happy with you, Ciampa. And Ciampa got sent straight into him, but he didn't attack him. He didn't start beating him up because he thought, no, he'll get the win if I do that. So he just kind of looked at the ref and went, whoa, I'm not touching him. And then Rust kicked him in the face. So Thatcher was obviously very pissed off by this. He got dragged away because he was like, I'm going to kick your ass, Ciampa, even though Ciampa didn't kick him. It was very confusing, but he got pulled away. And then Tommaso Ciampa and Tyler Rust put on a absolute clinic of brutal, vicious nastiness. Honestly, it was like on par with what we got when Thatcher and Ciampa went one-on-one at TakeOver. They just beat the ever-loving crap out of each other. Like, there were a few moments where it just looked like Ciampa's experience was going to give him the upper hand, but then Wade Barrett on the commentary table was like, well, let's not forget that Tyler Rust is a 15-year veteran here. He might not have had the same level of career that Ciampa has, but he's done a lot of stuff outside. And it showed at one point, because Rust out of nowhere just hit him with this axe kick, which was like, wow, Booker T is going to be really proud of that. And then he went for a pin, the pin didn't work, and he transitioned straight into an armbar. I was just colour me impressed. And just when it looked like Tyler Rust was going to come away with the unexpected, the upset victory, Tommaso Ciampa's experience, sadly, was just a little bit too much for him. Because just like he did to Cameron Grimes a week earlier, he kneed him in the face and then just pulled him over for a Willow's Bell, drilled him straight into the mat, and picked up the 1, 2, 3. And then after this, Ciampa and Thatcher just had like a weird stare down, where Thatcher was still really annoyed, even though Ciampa hadn't done anything. He hadn't kicked him in the face. It was just, he just needed somebody to vent his anger at, so we just chose him. But take nothing away from Tyler Rust, who came out of this match looking like an absolute badass. Huge future to come, and it seems like they're teasing something interesting going forward. Because during the commercial break, Malcolm Bivens apparently came out, and he was like stood in front of him, and he said, you're a star, man, you're gonna go far, you're gonna be a legend. Come with me and let's turn you into a superstar. Next up, we had a really quick Young Grizzled Veterans promo package thing where they were talking about all their accomplishments outside of the actual official NXT, all the stuff that they did just before the current global situation happened. And they were like, we are soon gonna be the best tag team in all of the land yet again. And I believe them. Give them a title shot. Right, next up, I'm just gonna bring this all into one collective down, because what are we doing with Dexter Lumis? Obviously, in recent weeks, he's had his mind-numbing program with Cameron Grimes, which thankfully came to an end at TakeOver War Games. They had that surprisingly excellent strap match, and I was just interested to see where they're going to go next with Grimes and Lumis. Because we got told during the Ciampa-Rust match that Cameron Grimes is actually, well, injured at this point because of the storyline attack that happened with Timothy Thatcher a week earlier, so he's not going to be on television for a couple of weeks. And then on top of this, Dexter Lumis spent this entire show sat in the crowd doodling. I sugar honey iced tea you not. Yeah, at first it looked like he was just watching a television program on his iPad. He was like, I don't know, watch NXT, I'm just gonna watch my thing here. But then as the night progressed, he'd been doodling a New Year's Evil logo, which I was like, okay, is he just designing an alternate logo? But no, he announced himself as the host for New Year's Evil. Dexter Lumis, the guy who never speaks, is going to host an event. This ain't gonna be good. And of course, because it is Dexter Lumis, he signed the whole thing off by doing this. And what a way to forget about all that Lumis nonsense by giving not just the up, but the yellow highlight of the week up to this next match. Mwah! Because of course we had Pete Dunne taking on Kyle O'Reilly, the most underrated rivalry of 2020 if you ask me, and it was a match for the #1 contendership for the NXT Championship. What more do you want? Of course these two know each other really well, so the story going into it, Pete Dunne had turned on Kyle O'Reilly a couple of weeks back at Halloween Havoc. The pair had gone back and forth in a War Games advantage match, and they'd also battled in an actual War Games match. Just these two know each other way too well. But before we could get anywhere near the match itself, both men made their their way down to the ring. Obviously, Kyle O'Reilly came down with the Undisputed Era, minus Bobby Fish, who's injured right now because of War Games. And then we had Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch come out with Pete Dunne. But before anything could happen, they all started fighting. Because Killian Dane and Drake Maverick just suddenly popped up out of nowhere and started beating up the NXT Tag Team Champions, obviously because of what they did the week before. And Undisputed Era, sensing they wanted a bit of a fight as well, they got involved. Then out of nowhere, the former NXT Tag Team Champions, Breezango, just flipped over the rope. Everything went crazy. They brawled out of the ring. But throughout all of this, Pete Dunne and Kyle O'Reilly did not break eye contact. I got so excited because, as you expect, they absolutely battered each other from start to finish. It was magnificent. Like I said, these two knew each other so well because of what they've been through over the last couple of weeks. They were just reversing everything. They were going one-on-one. They were trying to one-up each other with every strike, every kick, every piece of grappling transition goodness. It was so evenly matched, but equally every single shot, I was like, these guys are trying to actually hurt each other. This is a shoot fight. This is the closest thing we're going to get to a shoot fight in 2020. There is going to be a very slight mini down in the middle of this though, and it's nothing to do with the match itself, it's just because of NXT lying to me. Because at the start of this match, they were like, oh, there's going to be no interruptions, we're not going to stop this match at any point because you need to see this match from start to finish, it's going to be magnificent. But then literally, about 5 minutes in, they did a picture-in-picture break, which in the land of WWE, that doesn't class as an interruption. It's definitely an interruption when you're trying to sell me some kind of fast food in the middle of one of the most hard-hitting encounters of the year. And they didn't do this once, they did this twice. But take nothing away from the absolutely stellar work that we saw from both of these guys in this match. Because in my personal opinion, my favourite spot of the match was when Pete Dunne was going for like a bitter end on O'Reilly, but then he reversed it into a guillotine and just slept him. He slept him there and then. He fell to his knees and then he just kicked him in the face. And there was drama. There was an added hint of drama as well when Pete Dunne had his mouthpiece knocked out of his mouth and then he went to grab it. It was like, I need to put this back in or I'm going to lose some teeth. And then Kyle O'Reilly stood on his foot. I was like, he did the thing. He stands on the hand. That's what Pete Dunne does. This is so good. But in the end, there had to be a winner. There had to be a new number one contender for this NXT Championship going into New Year's Evil. And that honour fell to Kyle O'Reilly. Because in the closing stages of this absolute epic, Kyle O'Reilly did like a suplex thing which landed Pete Dunne on the outside of the ring, and then as Pete Dunne was trying to get himself back in, O'Reilly got to the top rope and just kneed him. He landed on the back of his neck with a knee. I'm not surprised he didn't get up. He's probably not going to get up for the next week. So we are going to get Kyle O'Reilly versus Finn Balor 2, and if you saw TakeOver 31, you know this is going to be special because take that brilliance that you had at TakeOver 31, dial it up by 1,000, that's what we're probably going to get. Okay, it's that time of the week again. It's Xia Li and Boa in the garage time. And this week I'm feeling in a particularly giving mood. We are coming up to Christmas, so this is going to get, I know, who'd have guessed it, an up. Because, and this isn't the reason it's getting it up, but as we opened onto this garage scene in the darkness again with the master staring at something in the distance, we noticed Xia Li was crying. So I was like, oh no, they're doing something horrible to Xia Li again. But they weren't. No, Xia Li was doing something horrible to Boa. She was kicking him so hard. There was like some slow-mo shots of this. You could see her leg smacking off his chest and the sweat just pulsating off his chest. And he was like saying, please, no, stop this, stop this. And the master was like, again, do it again. And I'm sorry, a man's chest got absolutely obliterated on this episode of NXT, so I cannot give that a down. It's getting an up, but if next week we don't see anything in the ring, we don't see an actual progression in this story, and it's just them in a garage again being absolutely bullied and traumatized, then it's gonna get it down. I just need something more, but for now, Boa, get well soon, buddy, because your chest looks sore. And then we had that match that was announced earlier in the night. We had Shotzi Blackheart taking on Indy Hartwell, and Shotzi came down to the ring on a new tank, which got an instant pop out of me. It's getting up. Admittedly, the two didn't really get much time to showcase anything more than just the odd impressive move. Shotzi Blackheart did a typical senton thing into the bottom turnbuckle, which looked particularly brutal tonight. But apart from that, it was more about what came next. Because obviously the Way was surrounding the ring throughout this match, because that's just what the Way do. They never leave one of their own whilst they're having a wrestling match. And Candice LeRae was like, oh, I'm going to distract the referee. And then Indy Hartwell can smack Shotzi Blackheart with the trophy of a mini Shotzi Blackheart doll on the top of it. But this went disastrously wrong because the referee suddenly turned back around, saw Indy Hartwell with the trophy, thwack Shotzi Blackheart straight in the stomach, so he went, yeah, it's a DQ, you don't do that. And what was really hilarious about this was the fact that Shotzi Blackheart had just been absolutely battered. She'd just been bullied to the floor with the trophy, but the Garganos were more concerned about the fact that the trophy was broken. Like, Gargano looked genuinely annoyed, like, I've just imported this all the way from Italy, this hideous, horrendous thing that looked like it's been made in a shed. Oh, it's so beautiful and you broke it. And then Indy Hartwell proceeded to beat up Shotzi Blackheart just a little bit more. Candice LeRae got involved as well because they hit like a double wicked stepsister thing on her, and it's an interesting way to go with this, because it looks like, based on what we got with Austin Theory earlier in the night, these two, Indy Hartwell and Theory, are trying to prove that they're worthy of being taught the ways of the way going forward. And I'm really intrigued by this. I'd like to see Indy Hartwell slowly grow into the new rotten heel of this NXT brand right now, along with Austin Theory. They could be the next generation of chicken shit heels, and then they could eventually overtake The Way and overpower Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae and be the new way, the Way Point 2.0, something like that. But as of this moment, Shotzi Blackheart really needs to get back in touch with her friends because she is looking a bit lonely. Then we had like a mini return package for Bronson Reed because he's going to be on NXT next week. I miss Bronson Reed, I really like him, so I'm looking forward to seeing him. And then we had the return of the man, the killer, the carrion of crosses himself. He returned on NXT, and that entrance is just a thing of absolute beauty. It's getting it up. Honestly, I think I could watch a full episode of NXT with just that entrance. I'm probably going to regret that because that will happen in a couple of years' time, but this was just exactly what you expected out of Karrion Kross. Desmond Troy was his victim of choice here, and he absolutely destroyed him from start to finish. He started off by just suplexing him, kicking him, punching him, all the rest of it, and then he hit him with a Doomsday Saito, which was just his incredible suplex, and he goes, Doomsday, before he's going to do it, which just spells the end. And then he locked in the cross jacket. Troy had no choice really but to tap out, and then Karrion Kross turned to the camera and he was like, right, Damian Priest, you shouldn't have called me out last week. This is going to be a very, very bad time for you because we're going to have a match at New Year's Evil, and it looks like Karrion Kross is going to absolutely kill him. In all honesty, it looks like WWE are just trying to polish him up a little bit more. He's been away for a while. They don't want to throw him straight back into that NXT Championship feud just yet. But I think going forward, yeah, he's going to win that belt back, isn't he? And then we had a little Finn Balor backstage moment where it looked like a pre-recorded promo, but it was already a promo on Kyle O'Reilly about him facing him at New Year's Evil, even though Kyle O'Reilly had only just won the match. So, did Finn Balor know this was coming? Or did he just record 2 videos just to not look stupid? Either way, he said it's not going to be Finn Balor versus Kyle O'Reilly 2, it's going to be Finn Balor versus Kyle O'Reilly the end, because you guessed it, he's going to put an end to Kyle O'Reilly. And then we made our way to the main event. It was Toni Storm taking on Rhea Ripley, a rivalry renewed. It was announced on social media earlier in the week. I've been giddy. This has been my Christmas, I'm going to tell you. Because obviously these two already faced each other once this year. It was at Worlds Collide, but a lot has changed since then. Rhea Ripley was the NXT Women's Champion then. She's not anymore. And Toni Storm did not have the same edge, the same single-mindedness that she has right now as this new heelish character. So this had all the makings of something very, very special. And it was exactly that, because these two knew each other so well. It was very similar to the Pete Dunne, Kyle O'Reilly stuff earlier in the night. It was a bit more fast-paced because you could sense they were trying to get it in, trying to fit it all in a much quicker time slot, a shorter time slot, I should say. And there were just counters galore. It was so smooth. It was by far the greatest showing we've had of Toni Storm since she's returned to NXT. And honestly, you could tell these two have just worked together so much in the past because everything they did was just snug. It was just so in your face. There was a baseball drop kick from Rhea Ripley to Toni, and I was just like, oh god, she's just taken her head off. And then there was an actual headbutt. There was a headbutt between Toni Storm and Rhea Ripley, and it was so hard, they both fell to the ground. That really hurt. And because they knew each other so well, they kept fighting out of each other's most brutal, most impactful moves. Like time and time again, Storm was not having any of it when it came to the Riptime. She kept wriggling out of it. And then on the last attempt, the last time she went to go for it, she like wriggled over the top rope, and then Raquel Gonzalez appeared. And she like pulled Toni Storm down a little bit and put her on the apron so she was like nice and secure. And then Toni got knocked off the apron by Rhea Ripley. She like booted her in the face. And then as she fell backwards, she hit Raquel Gonzalez, who then disappeared for a minute. But because Raquel Gonzalez is a force of nature, she soon popped up. She grabbed Rhea Ripley as the referee was attending to Toni Storm, who'd just been booted in the face, and she just lawn darted her straight into the steel ring post. Obviously, Toni Storm quickly took advantage of this. She dragged her back into the ring after hip attacking her into the bottom turnbuckle, and she hit with a Storm Zero, and Toni Storm just beat Rhea Ripley. If you didn't guess by now, it's all getting up. This was by far Toni Storm's biggest victory since returning to NXT. Obviously, it wasn't super clean because you had the Raquel Gonzalez stuff on the outside, but she still looked brilliant. She looked smooth. The ring rust and all that, everything else, all that stuff, that seems to be disappearing now week after week. She's looking like the same Toni Storm that won the Mae Young Classic, the same one that won the NXT UK Women's Championship. I feel like she is next in line for that NXT Women's Championship shot against Io Shirai. But before we get to any of that, it looks like we're going to get Raquel Gonzalez versus Rhea Ripley dos. And if it's anything like the first time, I know I said this last week, but I'm going to say it again, it could be one of the best matches, if not in 2020, if it doesn't happen in 2020, 2021. It's going to be one of the best things you see ever. So those have been your NXT ups and downs for this week's Black and Gold brand. Let me know what you think of all the ups and all the downs, which ones you disagree with, because there will be a couple, but I don't care. But in the meantime, do not forget to go on Twitter and follow everyone here at WhatCulture, at WhatCulture WWE. Follow myself on Twitter at gmorgan04. But most importantly, above all of that, have yourself the best Christmas and an incredible New Year, because, my God, don't you deserve it? It's been a mad one. I've been Gareth. You've been amazing. I will see you very, 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 very soon.